So in my previous Stephen King video, I talked about my absolute favorite Stephen King movies. I broke down my top 10 Stephen King films of all time and a couple of honorable mentions. Kind of hard to narrow down my favorites, but I'll be honest, this week's episode is going to be the worst Stephen King movies. And honestly, looking at his film catalog, you would think that there would be a lot of them because many of his books and stories have been adapted. Some of them have been adapted not as well as some of his best ones, like The Shawshank Redemption and Misery and The Shining and The Green Mile and Stand By Me. A lot of them are worse. But compiling this list, I really couldn't make a top 10 list because honestly, even if some of the films are bad, a lot of them are just kind of very nostalgic for me, so I kind of enjoy them for what they are. But I do have a few to mention here that are bad. And one of the films, the first one I'm going to talk about, I just flat out refuse to watch just because I'll get into it. But a lot of these films I either really don't like or they're just very forgettable and I really don't remember that much about them. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So first off, the first movie I'm going to mention here is the Dark Tower movie, which came out a few years back, and I just refuse to watch this movie because if I'm going to watch a Dark Tower anything, preferably a show, but if I'm going to watch a Dark Tower, I want it to be actually based on the source material. This movie is sort of like a what if scenario, which I won't get into for spoiler reasons, but it's not what I wanted. It's not what anybody asked for. And I've heard really awful things about it, so I basically just refuse to watch it. Maybe at some point in my life I will go and watch it, but I just have so many other things I could be doing besides watching this piece of crap. So yeah, hopefully one of these days The Dark Tower will actually get a proper adaptation and will actually get the story of the source material and it's very well thought out. Maybe Mike Flanagan will want to do that one day because he's kind of the Stephen King whisperer when it comes to adaptations recently. But yeah, as far as this movie goes, I'm just going to label it as the worst because I just refuse to watch it. Another movie that I think I've attempted to watch a few times and I just cannot get into it, and I've heard pretty awful things about, and I really just don't even enjoy the book either. So I really just don't care about this movie is what I'm trying to say, is Cell. Now, this is another pairing of this white guy I can't remember the name of and Samuel L. Jackson. And they were previously in another Stephen King adaptation, 1408, which I actually did enjoy that movie when I watched it, although I haven't seen that movie in a few years. That's kind of an underrated gem, from what I remember at least. This one, just the book is one of his worst books, and getting an adaptation that's not very well done, it's not good. So yeah, that's why it's on here. Yeah, this is definitely one of the worst Stephen King movies ever made. I can't even finish the damn thing. I fell asleep a couple times trying to watch it. So just in general, I'm not going to list all of them, but just in general, a lot of ill-advised sequels. Now I'm talking about not the first movies, obviously, like Children of the Corn, Pet Sematary, like things like that. Like usually the first of those are pretty good, but like Children of the Corn has like a dozen sequels and a couple of remakes, and they're not good. Just don't go down that rabbit hole. The first movie actually made, I think, my honorable mentions list. The first movie from 1984 is pretty good for what it is. Not like the best movie ever made, but it was serviceable. And the sequels after that are just really dumb. And I think recently it had a remake, and that was also very dumb. So yeah, just any like sequel that comes, like Firestarter 2 or fucking Pet Sematary 2, like just avoid those at all costs because they're not worth it. I'm trying to think of any sequel, like not like an actual, like Doctor Sleep is an actual sequel that was really good, but I'm trying to think of just like a knockoff sequel that would have been good. I can't think of anything. But anyway, just sequels in general are not good. Also, remakes are not good. I haven't seen the remake of Firestarter with what's this guy's name? I don't know, but with this guy, and just I have no interest because I know it's not going to be nearly as good. Also, on my actual list here, the new remake of Pet Sematary. This movie, first of all, the acting is somewhat good by John Lithgow because he's a really good actor, but everyone else not that good. And then once you start changing just a lot about the main story, including like a major thing that happens in the story, it's just not good. One of the worst remakes ever, and just very unnecessary. Just basically just a cash grab, because at this point, Stephen King with It, those movies coming out, Stephen King was getting a lot of popularity, and they're like, oh, we got to make a bunch of Stephen King stuff. And this one was just a dud. So Pet Sematary remake. Also, there's just, like I've mentioned, a few movies that I've seen in my lifetime, like especially when I was younger. I watched a ton of Stephen King movies. A lot of them I still love to this day. I will go back and rewatch them, but a lot of them I just are very foggy. I don't remember anything about. One of them would be Riding the Bullet, which was actually a novella in the collection Everything's Eventual, which pretty good novella, decent novella, but the movie I basically have no recollection of. Like, I remember watching it one time as a kid and then never watching it again, so it left like no impression on me. So maybe I'd go back and watch it and it would be good, but I doubt it. Another movie that could potentially be good, but I don't remember it being very good, is Sleepwalkers. This is not really even a Stephen King adaptation. It's more just, it's Stephen King involved. Like, I don't know, but I remember weird things about this movie. I remember it being kind of cheesy. If y'all disagree with me, comment down below. Maybe it's a masterpiece and I'm misremembering it, but I remember this movie also not being good. Sleepwalkers. This next one might offend one of my good buddies on BookTube, Josephina, because I'm pretty sure she loves this movie, but I remember The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger being kind of goofy and just very different in tone than the actual book. Like, the book itself is just kind of dystopian, and you're following this guy who's in this really crappy spot, and he's got to get on this game show to try to get money for his dying family, essentially. And from what I remember of the movie, it just turned that premise and just made it like just 80s Arnold Schwarzenegger cheese. And it's probably not, granted, I haven't seen this movie in a long time. Maybe it's good, maybe it's great, but from what I remember of it, it just sounds so cheesy. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe Josephina, if you're watching, you can convince me to go back and rewatch it. Maybe it's great. I remember it not being that great. Also, the movie Maximum Overdrive. I remember that movie also not being very good, but it probably was just kind of a, it's so bad, it's fun to watch kind of movie. I remember that one being like, it was just a fun movie to put on and not take too seriously, but it's probably not very good either. Maximum Overdrive, kind of loosely based off of a short story in Night Shift, where basically like machines are kind of slowly taking over the world. And a lot of these, it's all about like huge 18-wheeler trucks kind of taking over. And yeah, this one's actually directed by Stephen King. And this is like at the height of his drug-induced state. Like, what was he thinking? You know? But yeah, I remember that one not being great. And that's kind of all I have like planned for this video. This actually turned out to be a lot shorter than I thought. So I'm going to just quickly run through some of this Stephen King filmography that I have here pulled up on Wiki. You know, like a lot of his early movies I actually do really like. Carrie is great. The Shining is my favorite. Cujo, The Dead Zone, Christine, Children of the Corn, Firestarter. Those movies are all fantastic. Stand By Me. And then we got The Running Man, which is not very good. I also forgot to mention in my favorites video that Creepshow, a few of those things are straight off of Stephen King, and Creepshow is one of my all-time favorite horror movies, and Stephen King had a huge part in that movie, so definitely one of my favorites. A Graveyard Shift, I remember liking that movie, but maybe if I go back and watch it, it's probably not very good. That one is based off of the story in Night Shift, where, you know, you've got these people digging underground and there's giant rats. And yeah, that one was very fun. I remember the movie being good, but maybe if I go back and watch it, it won't be very good. And there's also a lot of Stephen King movies. I thought I've seen most of them, but a lot of these movies I just haven't seen. Well, Misery, obviously I've seen that, one of the best. But I haven't seen The Lawnmower Man. That's another Night Shift short. A lot of those Night Shift stories got made into movies. I've never seen The Lawnmower Man. I've never seen The Dark Half. I don't think I've even seen a trailer for it. But yeah, that's one that I could go back and watch. I don't think I've heard good things, but maybe. Also, Needful Things, that's kind of in the middle. Like, I remember liking it, but it wasn't like the best thing ever. The Shawshank Redemption, obviously, is one of the best. The Mangler, another just random Night Shift one. People just love adapting those Night Shift stories. Never seen it. It's directed by Tobe Hooper. Wow. That's the same guy who did Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Salem's Lot. So maybe it would be good. I don't know. Dolores Claiborne, fantastic. The Night Flyer from Nightmares and Dreamscapes. I'm not really a big vampire guy, so I'm probably not going to like that. Apt Pupil, I remember being good. Maybe a underrated one. The Green Mile, fantastic. I've still never seen Hearts in Atlantis. That's probably up on a lot of people's favorites list. Dreamcatcher would probably make a lot of people's worst, but I remember enjoying it as a kid, and probably if I go back and watch it, I don't know what I would think, but I remember enjoying it. Secret Window, I also remember enjoying, but again, I saw that when I was a kid, probably when I was like 10. So maybe watching it as an adult, I'd have a different story. And like I mentioned, Riding the Bullet is just, I remember nothing about that movie. 1408, I remember being great. The Mist didn't make my top 10 list, but objectively, it is a great movie. It's just hard to watch because they changed the ending of the movie, so it's just hard to watch. Dolan's Cadillac is a weird one too. Like, it's a random novella from like Nightmares and Dreamscapes. That could be a good movie, but I've never seen it. And then speaking of remakes, I've never seen the remake of Carrie. I've really only ever seen the first like original 1976 one. There's been a bunch of versions of Carrie. I've never seen any of them. Let me know if they're worth watching. I know one of my subscribers absolutely loves some of the remakes, so I'm sure they're going to be screaming in the comments. And then, yeah, Dark Tower. And then It, the 2017 movie, very good. Not top 10 worthy for me, but I know a lot of people absolutely love it. Gerald's Game, I still need to watch. 1922, I still need to watch. Pet Sematary remake. In the Tall Grass, I think that's co-written with Joe Hill. It's like a little novella. I've never read that, and I've never seen the movie. Really have no idea what happens in that. Dr. Sleep, fantastic movie. Children of the Corn remake. Meh. Firestar remake, I'm probably just not going to watch that. Mr. Harrigan's Phone, I still haven't seen. Maybe that's promising, but I've kind of heard bad things about that. The Boogeyman, I haven't heard good things about either. And then a couple of the new ones, The Life of Chuck by Mike Flanagan. That's one of my all-time favorite Stephen King novellas. That I still need to see. Salem's Lot, the new one, I've heard bad things about also. And then there's going to be a few new ones. There's going to be The Monkey, which is not really one of my favorite stories. Oh, and then there's going to be a remake of The Running Man by Edgar Wright. Isn't Edgar Wright, what films did he do? Oh yeah, Edgar Wright was the guy who did like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. Okay, well, maybe he would make that movie better. I don't know. I remember that 80s one just not being very good. Oh yeah, and then the other thing is that Stephen King just has a lot of like random TV movie, like made for TV movies and like mini series. A lot of those I have not seen. I've seen some of them. Like I've seen the original version of The Stand. That was when I was really young. I thought it was kind of okay. The Shining, I just kind of refused to watch just because I love the movie. And I've seen clips here and there of the miniseries, and I know Stephen King prefers that version, but I'm not going to go there. Storm of the Century is kind of mid-tier. Like, it's pretty good, but not like one of the best things ever. There's also a random one called Rose Red, which I don't think is based off of any Stephen King stuff. I remember enjoying it, but it's very hazy in my mind. There's also kind of a TV movie of desperation, which I may have seen that, but if I did see it, I remember nothing about it. There was also some TV series, mini-series with Lisa's Story, and that's one of my least favorite Stephen King books, so I really have no desire to go and watch that at all. Also, Under the Dome is like a actual TV series with like multiple seasons. I really don't have any interest in watching that. There's also The Dead Zone, which I love the movie, but apparently that got made into a like 5 season series, which holy crap. I've heard a lot of people say it's good, so I doubt I'll have time to watch that though. And then there's also obviously the original miniseries of It. I watched that growing up a lot. Watching it as an adult, you're kind of like, it's not that great, but it has a lot of nostalgia for me. There's also some for the Tommyknockers, which I'm probably not going to watch that. What else is there? There's also Haven, which is kind of loosely based off of the Colorado Kid, but obviously gets extended into multiple seasons, which I don't know. And then there's Bag of Bones, which again, one of my least favorite King books, so I'm probably not going to watch that either. Big Driver, very good novella, although very hard to read at times, so I don't know if I would be comfortable watching that. I mean, I might watch it. 11/22/63, again, not one of my favorites, and that's like a 1 season kind of deal. I've heard great things, but might not watch it. Mr. Mercedes got turned into a series, which I really don't have any interest in that. Same thing with The Outsider. I've heard bad things about that. The Stand got a new mini-series update. Probably no interest in that either. But yeah, so those are... This video kind of went off the rails at the end here, but those are generally like my worst or least favorite Stephen King adaptations. So like the Dark Tower one, I just kind of refuse to watch. I will watch a actual TV series if it gets made, preferably Mike Flanagan. Then there's Cell, which I've fallen asleep through trying to watch that piece of crap. The remake of Pet Sematary was just bad. Sleepwalkers and Riding the Bullet are kind of ones that I remember nothing about, and I just remember nothing about them. The Running Man I felt was very silly and very different from the actual source material. And then basically just all of the ill-advised sequels. Children of the Corn sequels, there's like 10 of those. Like Pet Sematary 2 and Firestarter 2. Like, come on, man. So yeah, those are my worst Stephen King movies list. Definitely let me know if you agree with any of my picks here. Do you disagree with me? Because I'm sure some people out there love The Running Man. I know Josephina does. Maybe someone out there loves the Dark Tower movie. You can try to convince me, but it probably won't work. But yeah, let me know if you agree or disagree with me. And what are your least favorite Stephen King movies? What is the worst Stephen King movie you've ever seen? Comment all of those lovely comments down below. And of course, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're already subscribed, stay tuned for more content. Stephen King videos every Friday. That's the plan. And next week, I'm going to be doing Stephen King for beginners. So I've got actually 10 Stephen King books plus one honorable mention to shout out for people who are new to Stephen King for beginners. So that's next week. And definitely let me know down in the comments below what Stephen King content you want to see in the new year. Also, I got my Patreon link down below if you want to go support me there for as little as $1 a month. And I got my Amazon wish list if you want to buy me a book. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic day.